Welcome back to Breaking Bullying. This week, we're going to discuss why people bully. We'll get into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is psychoanalyst Lori Singer. Lori, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
So before we get started, Lori, what does a psychoanalyst do?
Well, psychoanalyst it allows me to diagnose people from the DSM-5 so I can give a clinical diagnosis using the diagnostic criteria from the DSM. Whether that is bipolar, autism, OCD, things like that, diff- through that, people come to see me, and what I use personally is cognitive behavioral therapy. Psychoanalysts can use different types of modality in their therapies, and I choose to use cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm also board certified in applied behavioral analysis, which focuses on the environment and how your behavior is affected by your environment. I think the two modalities together are a very good combination in order to help people get back on track.
Okay, and just really quickly, what is a DSM?
So DSM is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders.
Okay.
And I believe, they're probably creating another one right now. Right now we're using the DSM-5. And in that DSM-5, there is all the mental health disorders that we have. And within a mental health disorder, in order for you to have that diagnosis, you have to fit a certain criteria. So they're based on characteristics and how many of those characteristics you have in that certain diagnosis.
So, Lori, today the topic is about why people bully. We know it's a behavior. A lot of people participate in this behavior from kids to adults. I know when I was younger, I experienced bullying as a kid. And then back last year, a lot of my listeners followed me as I ran for school board in my local town. And I got caught off guard with cyberbullying, which was actually brought on by uh, a school board member and their little minion friends, I call it. But it's like they made up a total lie about me. But why do people feel the need they have to put somebody else down? Are they doing it because they're just jerks? Or is it really more about what's going on in their lifestyle? And I just happen to be the target that day that's going to take the beating.
Well, I think, as far as kids bullying, I know, the adults bullying, I don't know if this started when they were younger and then it just wasn't given attention to. The way I look at it is, where did the bullying start? So let's say this adult that was bullying you, do they not have do they have a deficit in some type of social interaction where they're just not sure how to interact with other people? So they've used this bullying throughout their life. Is that the case? I don't know. I think it would need some investigation. To me, typically with kids, the bullying starts in one area, maybe at school or an after school program, and then it carries over into other settings. And typically it is a social deficit where they haven't learned how to engage appropriately. And this could be because of their environment and what they've witnessed as kids. We don't know what their role models are and what they've seen. It also could serve as a purpose as getting their needs met. The person that was bullying you, was that serving a purpose of where he was getting his or her, I assumed it was a he, needs met, meaning were they getting what they wanted from the situation? Were they getting you to back down? Were they getting you to come to their side? Were they getting attention from other people? And so it made them feel better about themselves. There's
That's
so
what it
many.
was for me right there. As actually a female who never met me, but looking back at some of their social media history, they got severe depression. I think this kind of gave them like, I'm important today. Look what I'm doing. And people fed into it. I think it just increased her dopamine up so high that she just went with it. But it's interesting what you said about,
And I'm sure, and you weren't the first one, I'm sure.
I know I'm probably just somebody that day, and I'm sure this person continues it with their whole life. But one thing you said about kids is really interesting. About they may not have learned how to interact with kids. If a child goes into a school setting not knowing how to interact with kids, and he's just a jerk. Is that really considered bullying? If he's doing it, maybe he doesn't understand that he's doing it. So I guess what I'm referring to a few I should say a few episodes back. Last year we had a guy named Sumo Dan, who's a friend of mine. He calls it like a bullying instinct, where we had this instinct to try to go back to a conversation. Like, I guess we have this instinct to bully. I don't know if that's true or not. He made a pretty good case. So going back to kids, if they haven't learned what's acceptable in a social setting, is that really going to be considered bullying, or that's just a kid being, you know, I don't know how to say it. That's just him. That's just her baseline.
It's possible. I think maybe there is something innate in it that, could be a response, but it may be a response because the kid does not know how to handle a situation. Again, there's that deficit. So if a parent or a teacher or a care provider notices that there is a child that is engaging in bullying more than the peers, then it has to be taught and it should be brought to the attention of the parent. And then I think that there needs to be a scenario in a social context where this kid is taught the appropriate conversation to have to role play and exchange. So when I do role playing with kids, I like to have let's say the bully play the part of the kid who's being picked on, but you give a script scenario of what is supposed to, the back and forth conversation, and let them feel what it's like. And then you switch roles. And so everybody gets to play a different part in this social context. So it's a contrived scenario because you have roles of certain individuals, but then you switch the roles so that the hope is that they're able to take this scenario and put it into a real life situation.
Okay.
Does that
Okay.
make sense, Tim?
Yeah. Yeah. The role playing does definitely make sense because it's going to give the kid kind of understanding of what the other person is feeling. Correct.
And an opportunity to learn the correct response or what to do or say. And how does that make them feel when they're being bullied? And again, maybe this bully is being bullied in other areas, and so they're just using that as their role model. There's so many different factors involved, and until you do some investigating to find out how many areas it's happening in, has it happened before? So the longer an individual engages in a behavior, the harder it is to change that behavior. You can
Interesting.
think Yes, you can think of smoking, smoking cigarettes. Somebody who has smoked for a year and then wants to stop is going to be a lot easier than you have somebody who has smoked for 20 years and now wants to stop.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's not possible to change your behavior, but it may be a little bit harder.
That's interesting. So for kids in schools, if the schools keep ignoring that behavior, um, for whatever reason, I mean, this kid basically he or she can get addicted to bullying. That's just I don't know if that's the right term to say, addicted to bullying,
Well,
but that's what
that
it
what they
sounds
do
like.
is
It's harder to change that behavior.
Well, it is almost addicted to it in a way because is this bully? Typically, there's four functions of a behavior. People engage in behaviors for either, one of these four or all of the four. And it could be attention, and attention can be positive or negative attention. Like, Timmy, stop bullying. How many times I've been to tell you you're not supposed to bully now? So you're still getting that negative attention from bullying, right? Or you get a preferred object. What is that object that is it your lunch money? Is it that you didn't get to serve on the board? Is that the goal intended for the bullying? I can't think of, is it something sensory, something that you needed as far as a sensory issue? And now for some reason, I can't think of the other. Oh, access to a tangible, attention, or escape from a situation. So let's say you have a bully in school who doesn't do well in math. And so they're always making fun of a certain kid who's a smart guy in math, right?
Yeah.
So he gets an escape out of math because now the focus isn't on how bad he is in math, but he's making fun of the kid who is smart. Does that make sense,
Yeah,
Tim?
that makes total sense. It's just
Right.
kind of like, you get the athlete who's really good, and you get the people who are not good at that sport, and they're just going to, rip on them, bring them down. hopefully so they can feel like they're on equal, like a equal playing
Exactly.
field. You have any good advice for like teachers approaching parents about their child maybe not acting appropriately? Because I do see their side, maybe some schools might ignore that kid has doing the bullying because sometimes the parents can be a piece of work themselves, or they just don't want to get yelled at. Well, my kid would never do that. You need to, they throw it back on them. So what's a good way to bring this to a parent's attention where it's not like your child's bad?
Well, I think the important thing to remember, there's two things to remember. One is that you should never ignore a situation, no matter how small it is, because it tends to grow, especially like if they're getting one of those four needs met, right? If they're
Hmm.
escaping a situation, if they're getting attention and access to some type of tangible that they want, it should never be ignored. But also, you can't just use punishment for a behavior because you're not teaching them a new behavior. You have to have a replacement behavior for that bully. You can't just reprimand them, keep them after class, tell them that they were bad, tell them that they were wrong. You have to teach them an appropriate way of dealing with things. So the punishment's not going to work alone. It's
Yeah.
just not going to work.
So is there a way to bring this up to the parents without the fear of retaliation from the parents? Because some parents don't want to hear about their kid not being respectful in school.
Well, I think parents aren't going to want, some parents don't want to admit it that their kid was a bully, or maybe they'll say, hey, that's the way I raised him, an eye for an eye, or, stick up for yourself, or whatever that is. But I think it's important is that the parents start I mean, not the parents, excuse me, the teachers start documenting situations, specific examples. I mean, data, if you have data to show a parent, and there's number of incidences, that's not just classroom specific, but we've documented this on the playground, and now we're documenting this in the classroom, and here's what we would like to do to help your child. So you're not just, because otherwise if you tell the parent, hey, your kid did this and he's a bad kid and you need to fix this, that's putting the parent on the defensive. But if you
Hmm.
say, we've had a couple of incidences and we'd like to tell you what they are, and here's what we would like to do to help your child. And what we would like for you to do is maybe review this with them as well and put them on some type of a verbal reward system, like good job communicating. I like the way you didn't put your hands on Timmy, on the
Yeah.
playground today, whatever it is. So there has to be a working relationship. But I think it's important that the school or after daycare or wherever the situation is starts documenting the situations because data, it's all about the data, right?
Yeah. That brought up a memory I had from teaching classes. So I own a martial arts school, so I work with a lot of kids. And I took this one kid in a couple years ago. He has diagnosed ADHD, not being treated at all with any medications. They're thinking the parents got him in martial arts to hopefully, help his ADHD. First day in class, this kid took off his belt, whipped his belt into the face of another kid. I was like, oh my goodness. Parent, that kid's bullying my kid, blah, blah, it's going off. I know the backstory of this kid. This kid's got severe ADHD. The parents don't want to medicate them. Could untreated ADHD lead to bullying behavior? Not like saying the kid's doing it on purpose, but they just can't control themselves. I'm not saying ADHD caused it, but obviously this kid has something where he just couldn't control himself. I just can't see this kid just taking his belt off and hitting this kid on purpose. I don't think he had that plan in his head. He's like 7 years old. But the parents saw it. It was bullying. Parent chewed me out. I had to let that kid go from my school because he was unsafe to be around other kids. So that type of behavior, could that ADHD not being treated be part of it? Or is it something more going on behind that kid that made him take off his belt to just hit a kid randomly? Because he laughed about it. I don't think he understood he caused that kid pain.
I don't think he did it either, probably. And there may be more than just the ADHD going on with the kid. It's it's too bad that he had to be kicked out of your class because I don't know if he tried to do it intentionally. He might have. He might have not known that it was going to hurt the kid or scare the kid, but he was probably so fidgety he couldn't stand still. I don't know if martial arts would have been the best thing for somebody with ADHD. I'm not really sure. I myself wasn't diagnosed till I was in my 50s, and I wish I could go back and have gotten the diagnosis much sooner because my life would have been much easier. I was always getting in trouble in school, always sent to the principal's office, not for bullying, but just for not being able to sit still, class clown. I didn't do those things on purpose. I just couldn't contain myself.
Okay.
So I think with the right setup, if the parents would have said to you, look, my kid has ADHD, I think we should make sure that there's space between him and another kid. What are the rules of your class so that we can review those with him and make sure that he understands what those are? They would have been setting him up for success.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. The only thing I got from that parent back then, I didn't have any evaluations going on. Now I evaluate a lot of my students that come in beforehand. They just jumped in like a lot of normal martial arts schools. You go do your free week, whatever, your free day, whatever. You just come in normal classes, get a free uniform and the belt, and that day. So I knew a little about that child, but looking how I didn't see it happen, but on camera, I saw it. And it's like it was just odd. It's just like, why would he take his belt off and just hit a kid in the face with it? I just don't. But to me, I knew that I don't think he understood what he was doing. But at the same time, you got parents who are watching this. That kid's a bully, and they're just, it's like you own a business.
Right. I get it.
You got
He's a liability. The
He
kid's a
is
liability.
unsafe because we have weapons in our school. We do commas. We have stuff they can throw. We have pads, targets, chairs, whatnot. It's just like it's a bummer.
But you know what, Tim? For you, it's a learning experience because now I don't know if you have some type of a checklist for the parent to fill out before they even start your class. And you don't have to ask if the kid's been diagnosed with anything, but is your child good at following rules? Are
Yeah.
you just different things? As
We
your
actually we
child.
actually have all that now. So
Okay, good.
they
Right.
they don't fill it out. I fill it out. I ask a lot of questions and I fill out. It's called the eval form. So yeah,
Good.
I've gotten better.
And you learn, and we learn from our, I don't want to say mistakes, but mistakes or experiences on what to do next time. And so from this kid, you learned what, and they could have set him up for success, and now maybe you'll get another child with ADHD that you'll be able to set up for success.
What strategies can schools and our community implement to help prevent bullying?
What strategies can the school use to help prevent bullying?
Yeah. So yeah, is there any strategies that the schools can put in place to help prevent those types of behaviors from happening? Especially, well, I know one is like you said, catch them when they're small.
Yes, that's very important.
Is there anything else they can do, or is that kind of we just
Well,
gotta?
I think that I think it's important also to not always, it's hard for teachers or care providers to not point out when somebody's doing something wrong, to draw attention to it, right?
Yeah,
But like the kid with the belt, right? Like, hey, what are you doing? Look what you did, hit him in the face. What are you thinking? So it makes that person, it gives them the attention, but it also could really have an effect on their self esteem.
yeah,
I think that if teachers and care providers can again set up some social situation, a social context, and how to react in certain ways is helpful. And role playing, I can't emphasize enough how important role playing is for kids. It gives them the opportunity to practice what you're trying to instill in them. You can't just say to a kid, that's like me telling you, okay, Tim, I'm going to sign you up for a marathon. We're not going to train, and I expect you to show up in 3 months and at the day of the race and you're going to run a marathon. But what if you have no miles put in? It's the same thing of teaching a kid. If you expect them to respond in a certain way, socially appropriate, you have to work with that individual and teach them how it's done. Like we would set up a training schedule. Okay, this week we're going to run 3 miles and then we're going to increase it. So you have that practice that you're doing. The same thing with the kid with the bullying. He needs that practice to engage in a socially appropriate behavior. So when a situation arises where he may be feeling inferior and he wants to lash out at somebody who's has deficits, and he's going to pick on that person, he will respond differently because he's practiced the right way to engage. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah. And you don't have to be a therapist to role play. You can anybody, a school teacher, principal, martial arts instructors, whatever, anybody who works with that kid can just sit down and role play what happened out. Like, let's just, like, okay, I'm the bully. I'm going to do what I did to you, whatever. Do you say, like, how does that make you feel? Like, or you just make up a whole scenario?
No, you make up a whole scenario and it
Okay.
could be short. So let's say, for example, let's say the person who was actually bullied plays the bully. And then the bully, you switched roles on them and you would have the person being bullied say something hurtful to the to you.
Yeah.
Let's say that you're the one that is a bully and you're bullying me. So now I'm going to be the person bullying and you're going to be on the other end of it. So let's say we have a script and I would say to you, uh, I don't know, whatever it is, Tim, you're so stupid. I don't know how you even get by, whatever it is. And then you would say, that really hurt my feelings and I'm not going to hang out with you. And I'm not even going to pay attention to what you say anymore and walk away. If
Yeah.
we can teach people who are bullied to just walk away from it and say, hey, you know what? You hurt my feelings. I'm going to walk away from you. And to teach the individual to walk away, that would be the best case.
Yeah. Going into adults, why adults can bully. Going back to just what at the time of this podcast, it'd been 6 months ago at the time this podcast comes out, but we're recording in March. This comes out in April. Back in October, people like people are just like what like they make up straight up lies about somebody. Like, is there like is bullying can bullying being like a mental health disorder? Like they have a mental health disorder and they need attention, so that's how they're gonna do it. Because to me, if you're going to make up a lie about somebody and do a Photoshop, like literally you can Photoshop pictures, which you could tell is Photoshop. Is that like a mental health behavior that they have? There's something more going on in their mind, or these people would just do stuff just because they're playing rude. I just can't understand how I should say normal person, but any person would just go up to somebody and say, let's make up a story about this person and let's spread it all over the internet. It's not true. We can't prove it, but let's just do it and get our friends involved. This person got their friends involved to share the message. I mean, it was ugly, and I wasn't directly attacked on it. I was attacked during it because I was friends with this person. But you know, so I guess yeah, that's my question. Is it a mental health issue that's causing these behaviors?
I would say yes. I mean, if I had, I would have to get more information on the individual, but typically it's some type of a personality disorder. There's different types of personality disorders, and one in particular is called histrionic, and that's when they want to create a lot of drama around them, and so that they're always the center of attention, and it's creating drama all the time.
Okay.
And so this individual who's creating the drama really needs to work on themselves. But then again, you have to want to work on yourself. And
Yeah.
how is that going to happen? Normally, when people come to see me, it's because it's affected their life, it's affected their job, it's affected their home life, their interpersonal relationships. So when things start to fall apart for an individual, that's when they come and seek help. Or if a loved one says, hey, look, you need help. We need to fix a
So
problem.
could that be like a warning sign where you have somebody who started going off like starting to make up stories about people to get attention? Could it be a warning sign that something major in their mental health could be coming up soon? Like, is it like
It
a
could be.
symptom? Like a
It,
symptom?
it could be. I mean, there's so many different mental health disorders out there.
Yeah.
Um, and then, again, is this person delusional? Does this person, there you have the other end of it. So if it's maybe not a personality disorder, maybe there's some chemical imbalance and this person is delusional and really believes what they're saying. Maybe they have convinced themselves in their mind that this is true.
Yeah.
And so they're going to tell everybody this is what's happening because they themselves believe it's true.
Yeah.
It may not be right. And you could tell them that, no, this is not true. They be so, I don't want to say disturbed, but have this false belief that they actually believe the lies and rumors that they're spreading. And there is a problem.
Yeah, and I think social media does a lot of damage to that because it's just, you know, gives them more of that dopamine
And
hit in their brain, like, "Oh,
yeah, because
this
then
is
then
good."
you have other people that jump on the bandwagon and they're reinforcing this delusional belief, right? And so it's feeding into it and they're saying, I am right. See, I am right.
Yeah. So, any advice for people who may have been cyberbullied or attacked by a coworker? Any advice to maybe see some compassion for that person? Because obviously, if they're doing this type of behavior, something up here is not firing right. Any advice on how we can work with that person, deal with them, or because I don't want to say ignore them, especially if you work with them every day, that could be a sign of bullying as well. Because now you're purposely trying to ignore them, but you're doing that to stay away from their, we'll say, BS.
I think the best thing, what you can do possibly is you would have to, again, collect the data, whatever it is that they're saying that are these false accusations. And if there is somebody higher up than you that you can report that to and say, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. This is what's happening. How do we handle it? Because there's a person that's unless you're the person that's on the very top of the chain, then you would have to take this into your own hands. But to handle it with other people and say, I'm really concerned. This is happening to me and I need your help. I don't know what to do. And reach out to other people who can be on your side to see what's happening. And they may have to take action towards the person that's making these accusations because somebody has to be responsible in the situation.
Yeah.
Somebody has to stop it and not allow it to continue. Because once they're done with you, they're going to move on to somebody else.
Yeah. So, as a parent, if my child is being bullied, I guess what I'm looking for is it right to tell our kids maybe just forgive those kids, maybe forgive him, let's show some compassion, that maybe explain to our kids like, no, you're being picked on not because of who you are, it's just because that person has. Okay, we can tell our kids that mental. I'm just try and make it sound better for my child. Like it's not you why you're getting picked on. It's because the other kid or as adult to adult, they have a mental health issue that they need to work on themselves. I guess what's the best way to phrase that for someone else to understand to show that person compassion? Because we don't want people to retaliate. Because I think that's
Right.
just keeps the bullying. That's just back and forth now. We got to end it somewheres. So what's the best way to do that to end it? So forgiveness, compassion, explain to a kid that they're going. I don't know. I still feel like someone's telling a kid like that kid has mental health issues. Probably not the right thing to say.
I don't think that's the best thing.
What's the
I don't
best
think
way
that's
to
it.
say
I
that?
think what I would do, with your child to sit down and say, look, we need to define what a bully is.
Yeah,
Just because this person is not just because a person isn't hitting you or pushing you, it doesn't mean that they aren't bullying you. Anything that intimidates you, threatens you, makes you feel bad or is disrespectful is a bully. There's no reason for you to be treated that way. It's giving that person strength or power. So I think what to tell your child is the best thing to do is really not respond to that person. This person isn't treating people the right way. We'll talk to the teacher but what I want you to do is stay away from this individual. I
yeah,
think there's no reason for your child to be put in a situation where they're making somebody's making them feel bad about themselves or
yeah,
threatening them in some way. The other person needs to have the work done. So I would just say that, look, I would just let your child know that it's not his fault. Okay. Unless, of course, he's, putting himself in a situation where he's being picked on and for some reason, he keeps going back to that situation again and again. But I would just let your child know it's not your fault. I'm going to take care of it. Let's focus on how you can make yourself feel safe because we want you to feel safe. And that's what's important. What can you do? And then go over different scenarios of what your child can do, where they can go, who they can hang out with, who do they have fun with, and stay clear of this person who needs to learn the more socially appropriate ways of dealing with situations.
Yeah, I had a conversation with this one lady a couple of weeks ago. Um, she was experiencing some cyberbullying on a Facebook group page. And I just said, you can still be part of that Facebook group page. Just block out all those people. Just block them all out. Who cares? I mean, take away their power. If they can't find you online anymore, they got no power. They'll find, I feel like for sometimes people, if you block somebody, some people might see it as I'm letting that person win, like, haha, they blocked me. They can make that a joke. Look what they blocked me now because they couldn't take care, they couldn't handle my criticism. But in reality, it's like, no, I'm trying to separate my negativity in my life. So
Yeah,
I
no,
guess,
in fact, I've had to do that recently, but it's more about I don't care to see certain posts, you know? I don't need to look at everybody's political agenda. So what you can do too is you can put them on snooze for 30 days and then they
yeah,
pop back up again. You know, there's that. But it's interesting that you say that because I had a friend of mine say, "Well, why don't you just get off social media?" And then it's like, "Well, then they win.
yeah,
Why should I have to take myself off? Why do I?" So it's, I think to your point, you know, just block the people and they don't know that you're blocking them. You just don't have to
no,
look at
you
it.
just don't see them anymore on your Facebook feeds. But I think some people might think that's a sign of, like, I gave up. I'm just going to block them. Like they think it's a sign of weakness. But to me, when I was running for school board, anyone was negative to me, I just block, 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 block. I don't care. I don't have to see you anymore. I don't care I had somebody going, did you see what they said about you on Nextdoor app? I go, I don't even know what Nextdoor app is. I don't even care. I don't know. But it's like, this is some crazy people. But
It is. And
yeah.
I think it's a good way to take care of yourself. I think that was very good advice that you gave this person to just block them and then you don't have to see it anymore.
Yeah. And then you can remain in your Facebook group page and they just can't see your stuff. You can't see their stuff. It's a win-win in my book.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, Lori, I want to thank you for coming on my podcast today. If people want to get a hold of you or find you, or if you're out in the California area, I know California is a lot bigger than Minnesota. Like your population, like in Los Angeles County, has 10 million people. Minnesota has 10 million people itself. But
That's funny.
how can we find you? Are you on social media, a website? What do you got?
Yeah, so there's they can find lauriesingerbehavioral.com is one way, and that is on Instagram and Facebook. And then also I wrote a book, You're Not Crazy, Living with Anxiety, Obsessions, and Fetishes. And so that's also a link.
That sounds like a very interesting book.
It is an interesting
That
book.
sounds, it should be also maybe made, it sounds like a good TV series too. A good TV series. 'Cause I saw that show on TLC, Obsessions, where people like one guy was eating, um,
Oh, I've seen that.
like parts of a wall. What's that called? Sheetrock. He was eating sheetrock. I was like, what? But that sounds like a very interesting book. You're not
Yeah.
crazy.
You're Not Crazy, Living with Anxiety, Obsessions, and Fetishes. And there's 6 case studies, real case studies in the book. And then it goes through what it looks like when you walk into my office and the type of treatment plan that we would be working on together. And in the back of the book is actually a toolkit on how you could write your own treatment plan.
Nice. Is that available just through your website, or can they find the book
Yep.
on Amazon?
You can find it on Amazon.
All
Yep.
right. Perfect. I will post your Amazon book link on the show notes as well, and on the YouTube link so people can find it on there. And I will post your website on the show notes as well. If people who watch YouTube, you saw it go past the screen a little bit ago. Lori, thank you so much for coming on today.
Tim, you're welcome. My pleasure.